Hi, everybody. My name is Ann Elgood. I'm the executive director here at ICLA, and I just want to welcome you to our open house for our spring season of exhibitions. Thank you so much for being here. It's a busy day in Los Angeles and around the country. As Jackie mentioned a few minutes ago, there are protests happening in 50 cities around the country. So, yes, I know many of us would probably be in Pershing Square right now if we weren't here with these beautiful artists. So even more gratitude for making your way here today, and maybe we'll all head over to Pershing Square afterwards. It also makes me really feel that the topics that are embedded in both of these shows, which are wide-ranging and you'll hear a lot about from Will and Amanda, but things like immigrant labor and the representation of Black bodies in the context of the moment and in the context even of the protests that are happening today are really going to resonate, I think, even more and be more important for all of us. So we are celebrating the exhibitions in our large galleries, Will Rawls' Siccer, that some of you have had a chance to see so far and some of you haven't yet, but I really encourage you to spend time in there. I would go in the gallery and be able to watch for like 10 minutes and then they would turn it off because they had to actually keep installing, and Amanda would have to sort of tap me on the shoulder and be like, okay, you need to leave. We're still working. I was so absorbed, I just wanted to stay all day. So I'm looking forward to seeing the whole piece, and I know many of you will, and there's beanbags and you can relax in there and hang out. And then we have Jackie Castillo's show in our project room. These are two wonderful, important, really beautiful Los Angeles artists. And I just said to somebody, I feel like we also are working with two of the nicest artists kind of ever. So congrats to both of them. We're really proud to have their work on view. I asked Will to remind me when we met, and he said it was 2013, which kind of blew my mind because I thought it was maybe like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. But I fell in love with Will the minute I met him. Those of you who know him, I'm sure, did the same. And I know Amanda did when she met him, and we just wanted to work with him immediately. So we are really thrilled. This is Will's largest presentation in a Los Angeles venue ever, but also since moving to LA and making it his home about a year or two ago. So that is really wonderful, and we're so happy to be the venue where this incredible project is being shown. So I need to thank a few people, as is always the case. There are many people to thank in terms of Will's production and presentation and tour. And also, I'm sure Amanda and Will will get into some of those, but I do want to give a special shout out to, of course, Amanda and Amelia, our curatorial associate, for both of these exhibitions. Congratulations, they're really special. This is also the first season of exhibitions that Amelia has been working with us as the curatorial associate, so it's wonderful to have her on the team, and she's been really a huge asset already in a very short amount of time. So thrilled to have Amelia on the team. I also want to give a special shout out, I don't think he's here, but Peter Gould, who is our exhibition designer and installation manager, and a million other things, really extraordinary. And for those of you who have been in Will's exhibition, you know that these exhibitions are extremely tough to install. The technology, the nuance is really intense. So special thanks to Peter and the whole installation crew, and also Will's sound engineer, Jimmy Garver. Where's Jimmy? I know. There he is. You'll be able to pick out the ICLA staff and others involved in the project because we're all wearing green. So Jimmy's wearing green. Some of you wore green too, which is a coincidence, but beautiful. I want to thank all our supporters that make these exhibitions possible. All of our exhibitions are supported by a patron group that we have called Curators Council. I know one of our co-chairs for Curators Council, Christine Bernstein, is here. Thank you, Christine. You guys don't have to clap because I'll never get through this. I want to turn it over. Though we love Christine. Clap for Christine, but don't clap for anyone else who I'm about to mention. Other funders for the exhibition include the Pasadena Art Alliance, Karen Hillenberg, Sarah and Joel McHale, Dory and Charles Mostov, with additional support from Tim Disney and John Moraes and Tom Kennedy. As Amanda mentioned earlier, a very integral part of Will's project is the live performance component. We are partnering with Red Cat, and we have Red Cat in the house. Katie and Joao are here. There they are. We love collaborating with Red Cat. We try to do it as often as possible. And we're just thrilled that the performance is going to happen next weekend, April 10th through the 12th. Get your tickets now. It's not to be missed. Will can talk about how important it is that you see both ways that this project gets presented. We are also very pleased today to be opening a new bookshelf residency, which you can see to my left with J&L Books. The bookshelf residency is a really special program that we do here at ICALA, and it's where we invite booksellers and independent publishers to present publications on our bookshelves, on these bookshelves, and also to organize an accompanying series of public programs. It's really wonderful. J&L Books was founded in 2000 by Jason Fulford and Leanne Shapton. Leanne is with us here today. I don't know, I saw her a second ago. There she is. Leanne is right here. Thank you for being here. They are celebrating their 25th anniversary with this bookshelf residency and also the installation that you'll see in the annex. And I want to mention that after the talk today, Leanne will be leading a workshop in which all of you can participate by drawing a recommended book title onto these wooden blocks of books, and that will kind of finish out the installation. So looking forward to that. And I want to say that all of our public programs are supported by our Fieldwork Council, and our public programs are organized by Oscar Hisa, who many of you know, our Director of Learning and Engagement, and Alberto Quezon. Okay, I'm just going to mention before I turn it over a couple of upcoming public programs so you can get them on your radar. On Friday, April 25th, we have an Art Buzz of Jackie's Project Room show. So Art Buzz is where you show up on a Friday night, bring a date, bring a friend, bring your mom, and we have wine and we have snacks and we do a very casual walkthrough, and all are welcome, and it's just a nice, relaxed way to see the exhibition and hear from curators, hear from others. And then on Thursday, May 1st, we have a listening session with Will. I'm going to let him tell you more about it, but it's related to the sound that you're hearing in the project and an upcoming, is it a vinyl that you're releasing? An upcoming vinyl release, which I will add to my very nascent record collection. And then on May 14th, we have a panel discussion called A Closer Look. This is a new series that we started in which we dig into curatorial practice a little bit deeper and speak with curators about the work that they do and how they do it and all the behind-the-scenes secrets that we do like to share, actually. And so that will be a curatorial panel that is addressing projects that are iterative in nature, so that every time you present the exhibition, it changes, it morphs, and it's designed that way originally by the artist. Obviously, Will is our case study for that, but it has an amazing lineup of people. So Katie Dammers from Red Cat will be on the panel, Kristen Kennedy from Pica in Portland, looking at Amy, Cynthia Post-Hun from The Momentary at Crystal Bridges, Lumi Tan, who's an independent curator but worked at the Kitchen for many, many years, and Tara Aisha Willis from the Getty Research Institute, and our very own Amanda. And I'm going to try to moderate that panel. Just looking at how many people are on it, I don't think that will be possible. So we'll see what happens. And lastly, I just want to thank our amazing staff at ICALA. We really have a wonderful staff who are essential to all the work that we do. They have a lot of talent, they have a lot of commitment, and they have a real sense of humor. Some of them are wearing Kermit the Frog t-shirts today. That's another way that you'll recognize them. But if you don't know the staff, please try to meet them, introduce yourself, and get to know us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Anne. Oh my gosh, the thanks could go on. Now I'm like, we gotta We got 40 minutes to talk about a lot. Will, thank you so much for being here. It's such a, I was telling Will today, walking earlier, of like, it's such an emotional thing to open a show, a thing that you've spent so much time thinking about. And I know I only entered the siccer world 2 years ago, but I feel so honored to get to work with you and to just, be sharing like this funny director's table stage with you. So just by way, because Anne mentioned when she first, I actually don't know when I first met you, but I remember seeing your work as part of Greater New York, which I don't know what year that was, but 2016. And then as we were talking earlier of like all of the work that you've also maybe performed in, or ways in which I may have also seen you or come to know you. So this feels really special. And while I'm drawn to you as a human, I think your work is also just it's so human too. And I think that's something that hopefully as you spend time in the exhibition, that connection to our humanity and our shared humanity really comes through in your practice and in your thinking. Will is originally, just some background, Will is originally from Boston, was on the East Coast for a long time, but is now here in LA. Happy to call LA home. And this is kind of a welcome, I hope, to LA in so many ways, having this show here. Will teaches at UCLA in the Department of World Arts, Cultures, Dance, corrected on that. And as a choreographer, as a dancer, as a writer, Will works across so many disciplines, from dance to movement, to image, to voice, to sound, as a way of breaking the holds and forms of representation and identity that we know, and offering us new ways of being and moving through the world. And siccer is such a testament to that kind of work that you've been doing and have been making. So let's dive in. So much of the work so much of your work, and obviously the work at ICLA, is about the conditions of seeing and being seen, of looking and consuming of images, and of bodies. And siccer in particular is thinking about the place of the image, the place of the body, the place of the voice in various states of movement and capture, to talk about formal systems of visuality, of power, of surveillance. And so I was hoping that maybe as a way to kind of ground us in what not everybody's been able to spend time in the show, so we're trying not to give too much away, but to ground us in some of the themes and ideas of it, to talk about the role of surveillance and of looking and being looked at in your work and our kind of contemporary relationship with technology, because that's one of the means by which we see and look and consume images, but how those two come into your work and practice.
Well, I just want to say thank you to the ICA LA for having me. It's been really great to work with you. This has been 2 years in the making. And Anne's such an incredible leader. I love all the shows you do. So, and I've just got to LA, so I feel like so lucky to be hosted here at the ICLA. It's an honor. And the staff's been incredible too. So yeah, thank you for that. It feels like a birthday. I mean, this project, I said a little bit before we sat down, but it's this is the 8th year that this project has existed. It's sort of I've been photographing dancers moving to the kind of incremental snaps of a camera to create stop motion images of them. And it's an arduous, painstaking process. And I think I kind of had a chance to play with a friend's stop motion animation kind of setup, and so I brought dancers in instead of claymation figurines. And what I discovered was that as you photograph people, they don't stay where you put them between photographs, and so when you play it back, there's all this jitteriness, which to me, as I said earlier, was like a sign of life. And so in a system where I feel we're so saturated with the camera, and it's sort of embedded in our medulla oblongata and our frontal lobe, everywhere we look, I wanted to find ways of sort of addressing the way in which it yet and still does not capture every gesture that comes out of our bodies. and how I might think of filmmaking as a way to emphasize what goes missing between frames. So that kind of, so I started with, it just is an arduous and slow process. And it started as a kind of a dance idea where I was working with dancers and photographing them incrementally. And then in the middle of making the live show, the pandemic hit, and so that created like all this delay in the process, and we had like a 19-month break from rehearsals, and then a 2 weeks of rehearsal, and then a 13-month break. So then like the whole project became sort of suspended over many years, and finally we premiered the show after 5 years of working on it in 2023, and it's just a miracle that it gets to live again because it's a installation and a live show, so everywhere we go, there has to be an institution or two institutions that agree to show both parts, because it's so much about the kind of hyper capture and the invasiveness of the camera, especially when presenting Black performers, Black bodies, Black gestures, and a kind of long American history of lens culture and the way that people are so constantly disaggregated from their own bodies and decontextualized and sort of turned into, I keep thinking of Auto-Tune the News as one of my like terrible examples of this. I think I'll stop there. I could go on and on, but
well, I think there's something about that too, of like in the conception and the making of the work, but also in the installation. Like as a visitor, you're meant to navigate this space. You get into your own body, and that happens from the environment, the physical environment, but also like the sonic environment too, of like, and when you're installing a video work like this or installing a work like this that has such a specific sound component, like there are so many moments where like we want to feel, as you to feel as a visitor, like sound in your body and be kind of brought back to your body, because I think with the lens and technologies, we're kind of, taken so much outside of our own body and place. So to do that through the installation seems like this connection to that idea. Something that you're talking, or like just kind of did, of like the click of the camera, and there's also kind of this way of keeping time in dance. And so something that maybe I would love to kind of hear more from you about is how you think about, this choice to use stop motion animation, which is traditionally associated with film, and then how you think about stop motion dance, or this kind of relationship to that.
I mean, I think stop motion dance can't exist without the camera in a way, and so the physical technique of it is just learning that, if I have a sequence where I'm reaching for, a cup of coffee, how many gestures can I break that into? There's sort of like nerdy kind of math to it, and how you kind of stagger a gesture out across multiple frames in your head, and then as the camera's going, how much you can move between intervals. So that's kind of the technique, and then so then you can play with how much continuity there is, how much breakage there is, and that allows for us to think about moments when a character jumps from one side of the screen to another, that there's all this stuff that's gone unphotographed. I'm sort of answering your question, I think. Yeah.
And I think that, that leads us to something I know we wanted to talk about, of like, there's a way in which the work is kind of playing with like production and post-production, because even with stop motion animation, when you're watching a film, like you're not aware of all of the images that go into its making. Those like moments of life are kind of erased. And so within siccer, it's about kind of making those moments of the in-between super visible, and the technologies of them, whether that's in the work, you see the camera that's snapping, you hear the camera that's snapping, you see from the frames that are installed, you can, you see the different ways of framing as a device. And something that, there's a reason why we're all wearing green, and why the wall's green. And there's kind of this play with hyper visibility of production, but also conceptually this way in which the green screen in film is meant to disappear. It's meant to it's a stand-in for something else. And so within the work, the green screen becomes, a protagonist in so many ways, as well as a prop, and the environment by which as a visitor you move through the space. And so for a work that is kind of speaking to notions of visibility and invisibility, because you talk a little bit about, the way that the green screen functions in that kind of relationship to visibility.
Yeah, I think the green screen, when you look at it, it's kind of like future time, because it will eventually be, keyed out in post-production, and a desert will be brought in, behind the performer. And so there's all these ways in which it promises all kinds of possible futures. But it's also like a green screen soundstage is a really laborious space for people to stand around in like a green screen suit and like lift the superhero, and then they get erased. And so what you'll see in the video is actually performers against a green screen soundstage that hasn't been keyed out. So it becomes an actual like material place where bodies go through things. And so I wanted to kind of bring the culprit forward, and also explore the poetics of that space. You spend time with the various dancers that are in the images. Some of them will be coming. One is here, Katrina Reed, who's here. Hi, Katrina. Katrina Reed, Jeremy Toussaint Baptiste, Holland Andrews, Keon Gaskin, Jess Pretty. There they are in the back. Hello, hello.
I know. I'm kind of like fangirling right now. I've just been watching all of you for hours.
But you get the chance to kind of spend time watching a body have a kind of sensorial experience, like video of someone moving like this. And so time opens up, and my hope is that people kind of can settle into their bodies and sit with another body that's doing something difficult but not impossible to understand, and kind of just spend time with that. And so bringing that forward, of course, is like pointing out a lot of the kind of the apparatus of filmmaking and the money that goes into it, and the kind of the stereotypes and genres that are used to kind of sell cinematic products. But then also, I think there's a poetry there, there's a tenderness there, there's a kind of compassion and emotional richness that's also happening as performers spend hours, kind of on set. So that's part of what I'm looking at too.
And there's kind of, and each of the performers has this moment within the video where they're like drawing attention to the camera and kind of like making that also like this idea of seeing and being seen and acknowledging that too. And to your point of that kind of something that we were talking about or kind of texting over was also this kind of the idea of breaking the monochrome, this idea, the choice to use chroma green and kind of in its various forms and iterations, this kind of a break that happens between a unifying factor, an ability to understand like the fragments that make up, not even the whole, but like that the whole can be fragmented in some way. And so I think that's also, does that come into how, your approach to have, 5 dancers, to have this be a collective body in so many ways that make up the work?
Yeah, let me see. I think that we talked a lot about genre in making the piece and kind of playing with being stuck in a character that you're also kind of inside of in stop motion. And genre is both like a way to clarify and like when you're heading to a horror movie, there's going to be kind of like these sort of 3 or 4 things you look for to kind of know you're watching a horror movie. Yeah. And that can both be, a sort of an illuminating factor, but also a trap. And so we sort of talked a lot about how to kind of each portrait of each performer kind of edges up against that kind of trap of being inside of a sort of genre or character. And then there's a lot of ways in which I wanted to make sure that each character, each performer is individuated through an internal monologue and other ways in which they sort of differentiate. And so the color green, I think it's probably worth it to say, like the idea of thinking through green as a kind of corollary to blackness is also something that's really deeply embedded in the project. Because as I was researching, of course, I went to Jim Henson and thought about Kermit the Frog and all these kind of, and Children's Television Workshop and like early 70s TV and all the ways in which like that project was about giving low-income kids and kids of color like access to education, tools, preparation for school that they didn't have kind of on the daily. And there's an episode of Sesame Street, or there's actually an episode on The Cher Show in 1975 when Ray Charles appears with Kermit the Frog and sings "It's Not Easy Being Green." And so in that episode, the color green becomes the blues. And so for me, that became a way of thinking through the kind of the sort of awful fungibility and of the black body inside of the marketplace, but also the kind of like the malleability, the fugitivity of the self, and so it's, I think in watching this, the piece doesn't really come down on one side of it, and I'm interested in that kind of ambiguity and complexity as well, as something that kind of holds the performers, in multiple facets of them.
Yeah. And the first, I don't know enough about this to be like dive into this, someone else might, but the first green screen was actually black.
Oh,
yeah.
Now you got me.
Well, no, I mean, it was, but I don't know enough about like when that transition happened, but I think that also like, I don't know, maybe that's there. Like the tissue of that is there. Someone else can maybe share with me and Will a little bit more about that.
More research always.
Yeah, but because you mentioned that space of and that embodiment of fugitivity, which is something, the work plays with hypervisibility, but also the space of fugitivity and disappearance. And one of the ways in which that kind of in between of those spaces is almost like alluded to within the work is this reference to the swamp that comes up. You'll see these kind of cattails that are installed throughout. The swamp is this kind of liminal space that's neither land nor water, something in between, but as a space and site of transformation, of self-determination, historically for people of color and for living beings now, always. And so let's maybe like dive into that, the role of fugitivity that comes up in the work of what it means to kind of allow a space where to kind of resist capture and to be in a fugitive state is a state of resilience and resistance.
Yeah, I mean, I think I tripped out on the color green for years, and so I was like, what's green? I was like, a swamper's green. And then, I have a long family history in the South in Georgia that's connected to the swamp and the wetlands, and the Okefenokee Swamp, which is in Georgia, which is where my dad's side of my family lived and worked. During the Indian Removal Act of 1831, a lot of Seminoles escaped in and kind of joined with the Creek Indians that were in the Okefenokee, as well as runaway slaves that also entered the swamp and kind of created these maroon communities. So the swamp became a place of like escape and also breaking down of some of the strictures and boundaries of racialized labor, enslaved labor, and a kind of liminality around self-determination and like greater options and possibilities around that. So the swamp is in general a thing I think a lot about. It's always in my head, and then here it kind of manifests because it's also green, so it becomes a bit more useful as a place to evoke in the project, both like sculpturally and in the video.
Yeah, it's interesting too because like the cat, in so many ways, like the cattails are this like prop that comes out. So like, comes out into, they're both in the video as well as in the installation. And there's this kind of like moment, they're also in the live performance. So these ways in which these like kind of props and markers like green or the cattail or whatever it might be are kind of marking these references and that come up. And maybe, something because you brought up genres, breaking genres, something I know we wanted to talk about was like the kind of like breaks that happen literally within stop motion, but also, more broadly, these kind of breaks that happen when working in dance and movement. I mean, so much of dance is about keeping and marking time, but also so much of the work is what happens outside of that marked time. And so I see your work, both siccer and beyond, as a way of like destabilizing our sense of time, also our sense of linear time, as you think about kind of history and future and past and present. Something with the green screen of like the future is there or is being thought about there in that moment. So maybe to kind of dive into a little bit of kind of the way in which your practice more broadly is kind of breaking those sense of disciplines or traditional disciplines that we might associate with an art museum or that we might associate with dance, and how it kind of breaks and moves across those.
Yeah, I mean, I've done I think museums are still figuring out what to do with dancers and choreographers, and I think I've been part of that experiment as a performer and as a maker for a long time. And yeah, some of the most inspiring artists to me are people who kind of break genres and kind of blend genres. Joan Jonas, for one, I think you'd like when you see what's in there, you'll kind of understand that relationship. Guy de Cointe, also like a French, also LA-based artist, is someone I really love. Milford Graves. But I think that I'm interested, how to talk, I mean, I think I'm interested in raising questions about bodies more than like apprehending them in certainty. And so I think like a person is an interdisciplinary project anyway, as is a life. And so it just kind of makes sense to reflect that in the work, and then to like hope that the institution can like hold space for that, and or at least like enter into kind of productive dialogue around that.
Which is like interesting to think about within like this single project as being able to speak to in so many ways. Like the same 5 dancers that appear in the film also appear in the live performance, and kind of holding the changes and the things that happen in a life over that time. I think that's, like also what it means to, as we're navigating institutionally and as museums, more broadly are navigating how to present performance and what it means to kind of work with the living. Like we've kind of figured it out when it comes with those who aren't with us sometimes. I mean, not necessarily, but what it means to like work with the living as a medium. And something that there was like a really fun moment in, we're like writing the object label for siccer, and it was like, okay, what do we put as, the medium line? And there was this like really, maybe like playful, but also like very incisive, incisive moment of like choreography belongs in the medium line, as well as kind of all the other things that you're going to experience physically. And like what that means to think about choreography and treat it in the same way as we would some of these other mediums that we've like figured out in museums. I think that choreography is a medium like through which experience gets passed or like chopped up and timed or organized or broken down or thrown around and sped up, slowed down. And so I think really working with the performers in the project over multiple years and them saying yes, like year in and year out, like the work wouldn't exist without their willingness to kind of just be inside of that experiment for years and to think and learn and grow into that space of being photographed and captured, and also in the live work, playing with ways to kind of express things in the interval between photographs. There's a camera on stage at the show at Red Cat next week, so there's also a kind of, it's like a staging of a stop motion photo shoot is like a simple way to say it. So I think that, maybe you can restate the question. Well, no, I think unpacking the things that we would, otherwise traditionally note as a medium, and then kind of thinking about what it means to kind of like even use that as a provocation. Like I think that's what interdisciplinary practice and interdisciplinary ways of being and understanding, like moving through the world, allow us to ask those questions about the things that are fixed and how do we unfix them. And I think that that's also, dance and movement-based work more broadly is that kind of evolutionary, iterative, kind of work. It's like our bodies ache and break and bend and move in different ways on different days, And so then how you present that and how you talk about that, both through, I think like siccer, again, is like an example of a way for us to talk about iteration in artistic practice and in curatorial practice, which, as Anne said, we'll go into May 14th, mark your calendars. But I think something that in like choosing to make this work and do this work in a museum where our relationship to, there's this particular relationship to finality, to the object, to like this moment where the exhibition opens and we step away. And so like, how do you relate to that kind of sense of finality? It is finished, we open the doors, but also that it like keeps living.
I don't believe in finality. I think that's the easiest answer, and I think my work reflects that. Like, I think in mounting anything I do, I was in rehearsal with the performers yesterday, and the performance hasn't been done in a year and a half, you know what I mean? And we kind of, and it's like, it takes all of our efforts and head scratching to kind of remember what it was and what we still want it to be and what we want to change and adjust, because it's important that the project always speaks to like the living and not to kind of holding up a dead idea that, or a dead performance or an old performance that we just literally can't redo. I think you kind of covered it really beautifully. I'm just gonna leave it there. Yeah.
Well, I think it's like so. Thanks. Well, this is the problem when you like talk through it before you talk about it. Yeah. This is it.
I know.
It's happening in real time.
Or did I say that this morning over coffee? Yeah.
But it's like, it's really important that iteration is not repetition. Like, it's not about doing the same thing. It's about like doing a thing that's the same thing but differently, or that has a kind of turn or change that happens with it. And one thing, because we were able to talk a little bit about, the video and the kind of environmental experience, but something that's so integral to the work and why there is kind of an album component is sound and is the voice, and is language. Like, the work's title literally references kind of a way in which language is a colonial tool for capture, for erasure. So maybe, and I think that's something that's come up a lot across your work, is that relationship to language and to text. And so maybe just to kind of speak about the way in which like intertextuality plays into your understanding of interdisciplinary dance performance-based work.
I mean, I did my undergrad degree is in art history, and I spent the whole time like looking at paintings and sculptures of dancers, but never reading any scholarship about dance, how it's made in relationship to those art historical objects. So that kind of left me on like, okay, where is dance in the history of art? And that sort of was the knot that I've been untying or retying for the rest of my life. So my works really thinks about kind of the transitions between movement and dance, and a body talking while it moves, and how the voice or the breath or repetition can kind of stiffen the body, or you can move sound around. And as Jess in the back has said, like, scoop out parts of your body as you're vocalizing and repeating a sound and letting it change. And yeah, I think that it's really about opening up that space of kind of a body in transition and a body in search of something that feels like a crux of what I'm trying to get people to look at, and then experience themselves like witnessing something that that hasn't finished becoming yet, and like holding that space for as long as possible, which is always feels kind of temporary. It's like the thing has to end, but trying to hold that space open as long as possible.
And I think there's something about that too, which, Will choreographed a performance called Parable of the Guest that was part of the Alvin Ailey exhibition at the Whitney, and did a kind of, a preview, a kind of opened up one of the rehearsals to a number of folks to go. And that was so generous of you, but two, it was this like really special chance to hear folks like reflecting on the work, and the work itself. It was kind of in dialogue with the work of dancer and choreographer Ulysses Dove, and there was something that really I had known this about Dove's work, but like didn't like your work allowed me to revisit the relationship to like time in Dove's work, of like, instead of the counts of in dance 1, 2, I mean, it was sounds, it was guttural, it was kind of like breath, it was movement, it was like allowing you to understand a way of moving that it was outside of like marked time, but still moving in that. And so there's something I feel like in your work, you're offering the and that like allows others to like enter into those spaces that might otherwise not exist.
Yeah, I mean, and Ulysses, like, the voice became important in my work because I saw, like, in 1995, like a 3-hour documentary by PBS about the American Ballet Theater, and Ulysses Dove was like hired to make a dance that was very sexually explicit and had same partner dancing, you know, at the height of, you know, the AIDS crisis at that moment, pre-AZT drugs. So it was very much like in the, I think the work was called Serious Pleasures, but he didn't use counts when he made dance. He just like vocalized, you know, to the dancers, and so. There's a way in which they're and a lot of the sound scores are not marked time, you know, like a triplet or it's very open space, and so he managed, like, in kind of transmitting with his voice into their bodies a sense of timing, an ability for the dancer to also kind of steer their own timing, and that really makes the difference between a dance that's like counted and a dance that's like alive and being negotiated in the moment. And yeah, so then that's kind of built into like a lot of the vocal practices that I've worked with the dancers. And in the video, the voice is, you know, the voices you hear are of the performers you're seeing. And if not, then it's either the two singers in the project are Jeremy Toussaint Baptiste and Holland Andrews. And so you'll hear a lot of their vocality in the project. But the voice is bringing in a layer of just like feeling and like the richness of that kind of affective like thickness that doesn't have a name and maybe shouldn't, that is there, and that like holds the person and kind of emanates off of them over time. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like our voice is also this kind of like internal fingerprint of our bodies. It has to move through before it goes out, and so that each voice that comes up in the work is also kind of a mirror to the ways that you also kind of give freedom to the movements, and each kind of vignette is what I keep saying when I talk about it, but like each kind of performer's moment and before they come together is so much of them as much as it is of kind of what you offer and frame through the filming of it and the making of it, but then allowing them to kind of embody and be and move as they need to, responding to those prompts.
Yeah, we talk a lot about like not so much improvisation as common sense because they've worked together for years, and so when we're working on an idea like stop motion for years and years and years, like how do you know already that that performer is going to make that choice or something like it, and how can you respond? And that just comes with time.
Yeah.
So, and I have that relationship with them too. So they've had a lot of playtime, you know, inside of that. It's been hard work too.
Playtime is good. One thing with looking at the dancers as they're in the midst of rehearsals for next week, knowing we are held by time, that I did want to just talk through or ask kind of one more question to kind of bring out that we won't get to dive into in full, but I think is really important to talk about or to acknowledge or to reflect on, even if briefly, of thinking of the ways in which, you know, you yourself will have kind of moved from a dance company to being a performer in other artists' works to now being an artist who has performers in your work or performing individually, but also like kind of that movement from also like the stage to the museum, and that relationship, that the relationship over time that has changed between museums and performance-based practices, and you know, knowing that a lot is still changing and shifting. I mean, a question maybe I have for you, rather than reflecting on that, is like from this experience and kind of your experiences of traveling siccer, what excites you about that movement, or what makes you kind of that movement into museums going forward? Or do you think it's changing as much as we like to hope it's changing? Maybe that's a better one.
I mean, I think choreographically, and I have my whole life. Like, I was 7 years old and I was like, Mom, I want to dance. And she put me in like ballet classes based on what our neighbor told her to do. And then I quit ballet when I was 9 because I want to be a choreographer. So I like have always wanted to like be the one who literally I want to be the one who designs the dances. So I think like what I can bring to the museum potentially is just thinking choreographically, which is about circulating bodies through space, pacing information and poetry and images out in time. I think choreography is maybe about making movement, but it's definitely about shaping time with the body. And so whether that's a performance in a gallery or an image of a performer, I'm trying to help people feel time differently. And like, you know, as one of my colleagues at UCLA says, who's right here, Victoria Mark, says to denaturalize like us, like our relationship to time. Because I think that, you know, objects in museums tend to sort of persist through time. And so what is it like to kind of let a body do that, but then know that it can't? And what's that shortfall? Is it a shortfall, or is it like a springboard for imagining how else we can experience ourselves here?
I mean, and that's what like dance offers, right? Like dance offers, whether in the museum, in the theater, in the club, like it's a space where you like exist outside of time in so many ways. Like art has that capacity to do that. And certainly in working with Will over the last, 2 weeks of being on site here, but even longer than that, but seeing how you also kind of, you know, I've learned so much even as a curator of like, there's ways in which you're thinking about bodies moving through space that we as institutions can learn from, of like how to, you know, care for that and how to care about that, the way that information and images flow in and out, and then literally how you move your body through the space, or where there are places to rest or places to move or places to disrupt and be disrupted, which may or may not happen today. But in the, because we are limited by time, we do want to give you time to spend in the exhibition. I have a couple thank yous to say. Is there anything that you want to share, Will, that we didn't get to go into?
Well, just that, like, Anne mentioned that there's a vinyl coming out of Siccer, and that's because over the course of many years of this project, like I was recording our conversations and improvised music sessions and brainstorms and failed recording sessions that I was trying to lead as a non-music producer, you know. And
you're like a non-filmmaker making film, non-music producer producing music.
Yes, all the nons. And so on May 1st, we're doing a listening party here, which is like a kind of near final draft of what will become the album, which won't be released until the fall, but please come back to hear sound that you will hear both in the installation and in the stage show at Red Cat next weekend, but also other stuff that isn't there, that's just sort of about the life of the project.
Definitely next week. There's information. There's some postcards too on the live performances if you have any questions or want to know more. But I want to thank Katie Dammers at Red Cat. I don't know where she is, but Katie, for just saying yes to this project. Katie was one of the original co-commissioners of this at the Kitchen, and the fact that we get to work together to realize it here is so special. Katie and I both spent some time in Philadelphia too. So that's, it's really, I'm so grateful to get to work with you in this capacity, Katie. So April 10th, 11th, 12th next week. Additional things which Anne mentioned, but I'm going to say again also to the performers in the work and in the live performance. I cannot wait to meet you.
If you're here, will you stand up?
Yeah,
I'm
can
so
you stand?
Or wave. Oh no!
Yes,
Keon,
get it.
Just Pretty,
Oh my
Katrina.
gosh!
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And their names are in the wall text, so you'll be able to, meet them and talk to them. And
Yes. Holland Andrews, who I didn't see, Keon Gaskin, Just Pretty, Katrina Reed, Jeremy Toussaint Baptiste, thank you so much for your contributions to this work. To Jimmy Garver, our sound guru, who Anne also thanked. But Jimmy, you've been such a wonderful collaborator and partner on this, so thank you. Thank you. And then also Maggie, Rebecca, and Sasha at Will's Studio have been really extraordinary too. So I want to thank them because it takes a team. And to Bianca Chen and Simon Chernow for their contributions to the program today, which you'll Mercy. And then just a couple more thanks to Anne, our fearless leader at ICLA, for trusting me with this project. Both Will's installation and Jackie's. It means so much to have your support and also to be able to like walk through the show and get your insights on lighting and color and all that stuff. So it means a lot to Amelia Schaefer Del Valle, who's been just, yes, love it. I'm so thankful for you, Amelia. You have no idea, but you're also a wonderful thought partner in this. To Oscar and Alberto, who have an incredible lineup of public programs ahead. I'm so excited to get to live with this work for the next 5 months. Thank you to artist Jackie Castillo and her father. Yes. And her father, Roberto Castillo. They're, woo! Yes. Oh, there you are. Thank you for your work in the project room. It's such a moving meditation on place, on memory, on people. And so I was so grateful to get to work with you on that. And I think those are all my thanks. Thank you all for being here and for supporting us at ICLA. Please spend time with these shows, get to know these incredible artists, work with them, write about them, bring visibility to their practices because they're shaping the art world that I want to see in the future. So get some tacos, get some drinks, see some art, dance to some music if you want to, and enjoy. Thank you so much.